Hi, welcome back. All right. I'm super excited today because we get to start talking about emptiness more directly. And we've spent the last year. I was doing some analysis yesterday, 2 days ago, about the how much material we're covering. And we're covering about, in the English translation, we're covering about a page a day, a little over a page a class, sometimes more, sometimes less. And so it's going to take us a long time to go through all of this. It will speed up, I promise. Um, but it doesn't really matter because the whole point of Lam Rim is to spend the time reviewing all the steps on the path, right? And one of the cool things we talked about in the ACI 13 class about an hour ago is that there's this concept of, we were talking about contradictions, and don't worry about the details. We were talking about contradictions, and we were talking about things that are diametrically opposed to each other. And what that means is that one thing has the power to push another thing out. Meaning one object has the capacity to push another object out of its way. You know, like if you sit next to a really big person, or walk by, like I was thinking like a football player, like an American football player. Those guys are huge, right? So like they push you out of the way. They're so big they don't even see you, right? It's kind of like that, you know. And so the idea is that there's certain behaviors that we have, like negative emotions. And then there's the antidotes to those negative emotions. And those antidotes push the other one out of the way. So the other one can't be there anymore. And so it's like, if you can push it out of the way, so what kinds of things do we want to push out of the way? I don't know. Our wrong views of emptiness, our wrong views of how the world works, our own negative emotions, like all of those things we want to push out, like send away, right? And so these two objects can't live at the same time in someone's perception. And so these two objects, right? And this is what we're studying in The Devil Debates the Angel, if you've been coming to those classes, not Geshe classes, is that there's two states of mind that cannot coexist at the same time, right? The state of mind of the devil, the one that thinks things are out there by themselves on their own, that have some kind of self nature independent of me. And then there's the angel. And the angel's point of view is cannot coexist, because if you have the angel's point of view and understand where things are coming from, you can't have both points of view together. They're diametrically opposed to each other. So we're just pushing the old idea out, right? And if you've ever had kind of these, I've been in classes where I'm like, oh my God, I so understand emptiness. I get it. I get it. And then I walk out the door and then I'm like, kind of fades, and then I'm like, what? And I try to explain it to someone and I'm like, Yeah, let's just drink this coffee in silence because I can't say what I can't express what I experienced. And I, frankly, I can't even remember it because the other idea pushed its way through. Like ignorance came back and pushed that other idea out. That's what I was thinking about in the last half hour, like how to describe that better if you were in the ACI 13 class. So, what we're doing now that we've studied meditation, so let me just give a little background a bit. This is the end of Pabonka's Lam Rim. This is the end of after he's gone through every step. He's explained all the things we need to know. Then he teaches meditation, and then he teaches wisdom. And he teaches them as they're the last two perfections, right? So he's taught everything else, and then he's finishing his last 2 days on the last two perfections, meditation and wisdom. And what we're doing is, so then typically once you learn all that, then you go back and then you meditate on the Lam Rim. You go back through all the steps. And so what we're doing first, someone wants to say hi. She's in a little needy right now. Yeah, she just wants a hug. So what we're doing first is we're learning how to meditate, right? So when we go through the Lam Rim, when we actually go through it, you're going to have all the tools you need, right? You're going to know exactly what to do when we get through each step on karma, when we get through each step on, death meditation, and even when we get to the other perfections eventually, you know, we're then going to know how to navigate them. But then we're doing something else is we're going to be like, well, look, let's infuse even the lower tracks of the Lam Rim, the path that are shared with everybody, with emptiness. Like, let's not waste our time. Like, basically, what we're doing, this is the way it was taught to me. We're not going to waste our time with wrong views of emptiness while we're moving through the Lam Rim. The Lam Rim also helps you build your view of emptiness and helps you solidify it too, by the way, and helps you understand what's wrong with your idea and how diametrically opposed ideas will push those wrong ideas out. But the next year or so, maybe a year and a half, we're going to be going through all those ideas of emptiness. What is it? What is it not? And how, and then we're always going to be trying to bring it back to like meditate. You got to meditate on these ideas, like work them out in your head, work them like, why did we talk about it this way? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And then it'll seep into you like a JB. I was with JB yesterday, and he's going to get me one of these super fancy tea infuser machines that somehow you put the tea in and it spins around the water as you're. It's like a as you're pouring the water in gently, it spins the tea leaves around in a certain way so the water is infusing on all angles of the tea leaves, and it's like that. You have to do that in your meditation. You have to be the $1,000 green tea from Kyoto. Okay. And then you have to get in meditation and just be in it and be like, why are we doing this? Why, like the why, the why becomes very clear over time. The why gets clearer and clearer. How about that? So that's what we're doing now. We've learned how to meditate, and I hope that you're all meditating. Cameras turned off. I don't know. And then we're going to start working on these ideas of emptiness and putting those ideas of emptiness into our meditations. So here we go. Let's get started. Emptiness chapter, projection. There we go. All right. So I took some text from earlier, and I should have brought the Tibetan over, but I didn't. At the very beginning of the meditation chapter, Pabonka Rinpoche says, okay, the next two perfections are the rest of the book is going to proceed in two parts. And he first says how to train yourself in quietude, in shamatha, which is the essence of single pointed meditation. And then how to train yourself in insight, which is the essence of wisdom. So meditation here is the fifth perfection. Wisdom is the sixth perfection. So we're using these two words, quietude and insight, shamatha and vipassana, shine and laktong. And these are the last two parts. And so now we did part one over the last year. Yay, good job, everyone. And now we're going to do part two. So that's where we are in the text. Why do I put that in the translation? Mike Hoffman, explain to me why I put something from the text that happened a year ago.
Because it doesn't mention it around where this text is printed. So if you didn't put this in, we would have no idea the context or what it's talking about.
Exactly, because all the text says is Nipa. Okay, all it says is number two. It doesn't explain what number two is. It doesn't give you any kind of context. Well, actually, it does. It says shared noa laktong, like the insight. It does actually explain what it says, but it doesn't explain where it came from. Okay. But that's why we put that there, just so we can, in the outline, know where the heck we are. So, who's going to get the karma of reading this first opening line of the wisdom chapter? How about, since you started talking, Mike, why don't you read the opening lines?
Thank you. Nipa Sherab Ki Ngowo Laktong La Lo Sula Sum. Gang Saki Dak Met Tenlam Bepa. Chuki Dak Met Tanlan Bepa. De Le Laktong Ki Solo.
Nice. Okay. All right. So the second part, as I said, the second part here. So we have the wisdom of the essence of wisdom, laktong, vipassana. Okay. That's the vipassana is the Sanskrit, laktong is the Tibetan. We're translating this as insight. All right. And how to train yourself, how to educate yourself, how to be trained, I guess. Okay. So the second part is how we're gonna understand the essence of wisdom, which is vipassana. And this presentation has three parts, three sections. All right. The first one is Kangsaki Dakme, which means let's see here. We're establishing, so Tenla Bepa means to establish or set forth, or this is what we're going to do. All right. We're going to discuss the lack of any self nature to the person, Kangsak. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the emptiness of people. Okay. The self nature to people. The next thing we're going to establish, Tenla Bepa, is the lack of self nature to or of things, Ch. So these two types of self-natures, lack of self-nature, the lack of self-nature to things and the lack of self-nature to people, to the person. And then the third thing we're going to do from there, after we do those two things, we're going to talk about the method to develop insight. We're going to talk about how to actually get insight. So, you see my notes? Someone said we see your notes. No? Okay. Yeah, because you saw that because you thought that was my. I see. Okay. All right. So here we are. 3 steps: the emptiness to the people, the lack of self nature to people, lack of self nature to things, and how do we actually develop insight? So, question. I have a $100 question. We're going to start this next section with a $100 question. Is there something wrong? Is there something in there that feels wrong to you or off? We're going to establish first the emptiness of the lack of self nature to people, the lack of self nature to things, and then we're going to develop insight. Does something feel, for those of you who've studied for a while, is there anything that seems odd? How about odd? Maybe wrong is not the right word, but odd. While you're thinking. Cancel the bet. Sorry. Cancel.
Oh,
What were you going to say?
it's negative thing. It sounds empty. How we can something like perceive if it's existing this way, like
Nope.
no?
Nope. Mike Hoffman, can you, I think, Mike, I think you just got the right answer. Can you explain what you're saying?
It's kind of saying what Roxana was saying that like we should study emptiness, we should study insight first, and then we can examine the emptiness of people and the emptiness of things. But if we don't understand emptiness, how would we apply it to anything?
No. It's no, that's a really good idea, but no. Francisco, you almost have it. Do you want to explain it?
That we usually go first to the wisdom insight, like theoretically,
Mm-hmm.
and we start like applying to objects how they perceive it, and then we start applying for our people and emotion.
No. You guys are all so close, but no. What I wanted you to say, when you start teaching emptiness, do you teach emptiness about the lack of self nature to things, or you talk about the lack of self nature to people? Things, right? The pen. What's this? It's a pen. If Hendrix comes in and I go, "Hey buddy, what's this?" What does he do? He puts it in his mouth and then eats it, right? Pen does he not only does he chew it, he just rips it apart. That's how Hendrix is. Okay. So we first start with the emptiness of things because that seems like it's easier. And then we go on to the emptiness of people. And then we go on, and then I think we're just missing the point of number 3. The point of number 3 is how do you actually develop insight? Meaning, insight, the essence of insight is wisdom, but insight is actually seeing emptiness directly. Okay. So I didn't quite say it all that way, but there seems to be something odd going on. And I think we should think about it. Pabonka Rinpoche is starting with the emptiness of people and then establish emptiness of things. When pedagogically, it seems like it's easier to understand the emptiness of things first, outer objects, and then begin to apply it to yourself afterwards. So let's think about it. Just think about it. Like, and this is how we need to read these things. Like, I mean, of course, if you're brand new to it, you would never have thought that because it's all brand new, right? So don't worry. But as we, if you've gone through the Lam Rim several times and you've been to a gazillion classes and you've heard the pen a quadrillion, zillion, billions, right? That's a lot, every class you hear about the pen. Then you start wondering, like, well, why is this person doing it this way? Like, what benefit? If I've heard this a million times, like when someone pulls up the pen and goes, "What's this?" I'm like, "What am I having for lunch?" Right? I'm done. I check out. My mind's like, Actually, my mind doesn't. I find this is what pedagogically, this is what you do. You look for, if you're interested, of course. If you're not interested, then it doesn't matter. You look for why, like what else is going on? How is the teacher teaching it? In what ways am I still stuck in self-existence? Oh, I'm annoyed that someone else is teaching me the pen again. Clearly, you still have negative emotions, dummy. Do you think you're free of negative emotions if you're irritated in a class? Right. But then you start looking like, oh, well, what the hell's going on? So then then I'm using ALL's database on their website and looking for things. And like last night we were doing channel theory and I was like, oh my God, it's Choni Lama. Like I didn't even realize we were learning. And I was like, I didn't know Choni Lama wrote about the subtle body. And so I'm in the database, because the content of the class I knew already, but I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I found that Choni Lama has a 50-page book on channels. And Geshe mentioned it 5 years ago in a Lam Rim. And it was all of a sudden it popped out, right? Wow. And the only translated part of it, he didn't translate the whole thing. So you got to ask yourself questions like, why? Why would we do people first? One of the things in the chat is interesting, right? When you see emptiness directly, this is an interesting hypothesis. Good. When you see emptiness directly for the first time, you see the emptiness of your mind, of emptiness of you. That's the emptiness you see first, right? So maybe there's something there. Or maybe you're not interested at all and you're wondering why Tim's even asking this question. And that has to do with your seeds and not mine. All right. Next line. And by next class, I will have verse numbers on this. I didn't put verse numbers in yet. So I was still trying to figure out how I was going to do it. Here we go. All right, next line. Who wants to be? Laura, are you translating? Let's see, where did you go?
Okay. Nampolani Nyamchak Nam Pata Poikyong Tul Tang Jetop Gyumalta Poikyong Tsulo.
Nice. All right, so the first part of every book is the outline, okay? So the first section, what's the first section? The first section is The lack of self, we're going to establish the lack of self nature of people. Okay. The first section has 2 parts. Yay. And these commas, these shays help mark off the lines for you, by the way. So the first part is Kyungsul, how to cultivate, how to develop, how to develop namshak, which is balanced meditation, samadhi, deep state of meditation. How to develop a deep state of meditation, which is like namka. Namka can mean sky, it can mean empty space. Okay. So there's something here about how to cultivate a deep type of meditation, which is like empty space. And then secondly, Jetob. Jetob is after your meditation, after your deep state of meditation, you're going to develop how to see all things like a guma, like an illusion. To see how everything is like an illusion. So after your meditation, you've been in a deep meditation. Right? So interesting, right? He's starting his emptiness chapter by saying, how do we get into a deep state of meditation? Right? Which somehow this relates to this lack of a self or a lack of self nature to people. All right. You see, so now we're like, all of a sudden he's connecting these ideas together. And there's something going on here that I need to ask the boss about. And it has to do with Jetob. Does anyone recognize that expression? Which means after the meditation. Does anyone recognize yes, aftermath, Jetob Yeshe? Okay. Which is the Tibetan name for what happens after you see emptiness directly. All right. So I need to ask the boss here, do some research, because it doesn't seem like we're talking about seeing emptiness directly, right? Because he's saying namshak, which is balanced meditation, a deep state of meditation, but he's not saying shine. He's not saying shamatha. Like he's not saying how to develop shamatha, and then he's not, which would then lead you to have deep insight into wisdom, i.e., see emptiness directly, and then lead you what happens after you see emptiness directly, the Jechop Yeshe, the experiences that happen after you come out of that transformative experience. There's a series of realizations and experiences that an Arya has in that moment as they're like entering their whole new world, right? After having seen emptiness directly. Like that major transition, like that's a major transition. There's your 4th flower DCIers, major transitions in one life, right? Your seeds have completely forced you to step into an entirely different world for you. So there's something going on here, like how to cultivate that deep state of meditation, namchak, which we just talked about for a year. And then afterwards, how to see that everything that appears to you like an illusion. How to train yourself in that. Okay, we're going to find out what that means. All right. Let's have Francisco read the next line, please.
Thank you. Nagbolaganya
Gotcha.
Nepe nya kyapa nipe nga then pay chik ra ne pay na ben pay du ra ne pay na de shi go.
Nice. All right, so now we're in the first part. Okay. So we're in the first part of we're here. All right. How do we cultivate that deep meditation, which is like the sky or empty space? Right. And because this is talking about it as empty space, we're definitely not in shamatha. Okay. So how do we do that? This is going to proceed in 4 ways. Don't you love outlines? So nice. Right? There's going to be 4 deshiya. There are 4 category or 4 ways that this subject is going, how we're going to deal with this first subject of how do we cultivate this deep state of meditation, which is like empty space. So there's kind of 4 things we're going to discuss here, 4 key points. Okay, keeps using this expression nepane, nepene. All right, like key ideas. The first thing we're going to do, the first key idea is gotcha. Remember what I talked about? Putting the tattoo gotcha on of the text of the word gotcha on my forearm, my bulging forearms, right? Working them out like, oh, look at that, right? I have skinny arms like that, the gotcha. We need to figure out the object that we deny. Hold on, I'm just changing my transition. Object that we deny. Right, we have to determine, in order to understand what emptiness is, we have to understand what emptiness is not. That sounds a lot like the logic schools, everybody. That sounds a lot like the thing that we need to cancel. Everything that is not the coffee cup is the coffee cup. Right? Get it? If you can understand everything that's not the coffee cup is what is the coffee cup, maybe there's something in there in that process to help us get to understand what emptiness is by determining what emptiness is not. So the first thing we're going to learn about emptiness is figuring out what emptiness is not. The gotcha, the thing that we deny. And even in English, it kind of sounds, it doesn't happen in other languages, but it sounds kind of cool. Because like, if you play a joke on somebody, or scare them, like little kids like to do it, or little kids that are adults like to do it too, and if you trick someone, right, in English, you say, oh, gotcha, I got you, right? But it's pronounced, I gotcha, right? Don't explain. I don't know why the U has a ch sound in it. I gotcha. I don't know why, but it's just how English is pronounced in America. But it sounds like gak, ja. Okay, the thing that we deny. The thing that tricks you into thinking it's self-existent. I gotcha. Which doesn't work in other languages as a play on words. But we need to figure out the thing that we believe is self-existent, the things that are tricking us into believing that they're coming from their own side. So we can determine what emptiness is actually empty of. So we're going to do that. That's going to be a nice long section. The next section is called Keba. Keba. All right. The categories. Okay. But what the hell does that mean? Okay. And you have to keep reading in the sentence to understand what it means. And I will come back to number 2 after we do 3 and 4. So number 3 is that, come on, Tim, a self which exists truly cannot be identical with something. Okay. And since we're talking about, there's a lot in here that you have to infer. Sorry. Okay. So the third part is determining that if a self existed truly, okay, that it cannot be identical with the 5 parts of the person, 5 parts of a person, the pungpos, the 5 heaps. I'm actually changing my translation on the fly, which is kind of cool. And then secondly, that if a self truly existed, it couldn't be distinct from the 5 parts. It couldn't be separate from the 5 parts of a person. Okay. So we have two things we're going to investigate. If there is a self which truly exists, which it doesn't, but if there were a self, for a self to truly exist, it would have to be chikdrel. It would have to be identical with, it would have to be one with the parts of the self. That would have to be one with your 5 parts, the 5 heaps, the pungpos, right? We'll talk about what all those things are exactly. And then he says, okay, well, because that's not the case, it ends up being not the case, right? Then you must be separate from them. They cannot be, I'm sorry. First one, they cannot be identical, but then it can't be separate from them. And then going back to number 2, the Kyaba, that for a self to truly exist, it must be the other option. Okay. The other option is it must be either identical or distinct from the heaps. And this is a nasty sentence, guys. Okay. I usually don't say that. Like Pabonka's or Trijang Rinpoche is usually really, expresses a lot in this, like in his writing, but this one's a nasty sentence. Okay. So let me say it again. First, we're going to determine what is emptiness empty of, right? What are we canceling, right? And it's not going to determine what we're canceling. It's saying that basically we're going to learn that we must cancel something. So the first thing we're going to work with is that in order for a self to be truly existent, for the self to be self-existent, which is a weird way of saying it, me, Tim, Marina, Mike, Laura, Francisco, you, the me. For that me to be self-existent, it must be identical to the parts of me, or it must be distinct from my parts of me. That's the first one. Then we say, for it to exist truly, it cannot be identical with the parts of me. And we say it cannot be distinct from the parts of me. And we're going to talk about this. This is the one in many argument. Okay. Are you one thing or are you many things? Are you all the parts of you put together? Because if we put all the parts of you together, would you still be you? Like if I took all of your parts and reassembled them, if you watched Short Circuit, Johnny 5, right? Put all the robot parts together, would I still get a mic? Right? They had 5 identical robots in short circuit, right? 5, all the same parts, but one of them became conscious and the other 4 did not. I mean, somehow it happened through a lightning strike or something. I don't know. Doesn't matter. But the point is that if you put all the same parts together, my first Dharma movie, Short Circuit, back in 1986, something like that. Of course, now I want to find out when. When did that movie come out? Wow, that was good, Tim. Nice. 1986. Fucking A. All right. Okay. If you took every single part of you, every single cell, every single chemical, and I disassembled you and put you on the table, right? And I'm like, those are all the parts of Mike, right? And then I went on to the other table over there and I found all the same parts and I put all the parts together, reassemble Mike. Would I get Mike? No, right? So you can't be, you, because if I cut off part of Mike's hand, he's still Mike. So which parts do I not include that still make Mike? I don't know. Like his nose, his hat. He likes to wear hats, right? You know, which part of Mike is not Mike, right? And what is the minimal number of parts of Mike that I need to create Mike? You know, that's a weird question, right? That you can't be your parts because you aren't in your parts, but neither are you separate from your parts, because if I didn't have the parts, I wouldn't have Mike, right? You know, it doesn't make sense. Like there's something going on here that doesn't make sense, and that's how we get to the gotcha. That's how we get to the place of the thing we deny. We do all these mental gymnastics to understand what things are not to get to what they are. And this is what Nagarjuna does. This is what all the Majjhimika Prasangika people do. You determine what things are not, and then what's left. And in the case of emptiness, what's left? It's an absence of self-existence. If you cancel everything that's self-existent, you have emptiness. If you cancel the self-existence of yourself and you're able to perceive it, then you're perceiving that absence. And we're going to get there. Who wants to read next? How about Marina's next on the pictures?
Peter Shine, Tanpo Shin Dru.
Some.
Sam Nyon Monk Non, Gyur Go Non Pe.
Good.
Good.
Go. Yep.
Jik Pe Lam Shirak Nam.
Excuse me, I messed up. I corrected something. You were right. It's Nun. Sorry.
Okay. Non Pe Jik Ten Pe. Lam Shirak Nam Chen. Ki Lak Non Sok Mi Gompar.
Nice. Okay. Okay, hold on a second. Signs, right? Okay. So once we fully establish ourselves in Shine, right? Shine, shamatha. Tenpo is like firmly, fully, like solidly. That's a good translation. Let me put solidly. I was looking for that word last night. You know, once you've solidly achieved Drup at Shine, all right? Like it feels like steady, like bam, once you arrive there, right? Now we need to go to the end. We need to go to the verb, right? We should not. Okay, so once you reach shamatha, and these are all the warnings that we've had for the last year, but we're going to review them again. Once we reach shamatha, we should not meditate on certain types of laktong. Okay, this gets interesting. Certain types of insight meditation practices. We should not be meditating on them and what do they do? They're just kind of here it is. They're suppressing your obvious mental afflictions, like the obvious expressions of your negative emotions, right? Like if you get out of a meditation and you feel really good, that's a good word, at bay. Your negative emotions are held at bay, right? They're kind of, they're out there. They feel so far away that you're still going to maintain some kind of happiness or bliss of the meditation. And then they start rushing back in, right? And then your meditation did not end all the cycle of suffering. Your meditation just kept it at bay, right? The first time you drive and someone does something stupid, someone rides your ass and tailgates you and flashes their lights at you, and they're just they're just Buddhas trying to see how good you think you are. Right? They're just being like, let's test him today. Right? So don't do once you reach shamatha, don't then engage practices which merely hold your negative emotions at bay. All right. And these types of meditations, the word they use here is jikten pelam, like the path of the world, which is such a weird way of saying it in English, but it's like these types of meditations keep the world as the world is. They do nothing to change the world. They do nothing to change your world. All right. They are not the path less traveled. They are the path always traveled. Right? It's what we normally do. Okay. And what is one of those examples? Shirak Namchen, Gilaktong. All right. And these are types of meditation. We've talked about these. These are like form and formless realm causal meditations where each level you go deeper, it feels like you experience and you feel like you've achieved a higher level of peace, a higher level of Shi, because you're turning off the noise or the static of the previous level. It becomes subtler and subtler, more and more quiet. It feels better. There's less and less of discrimination. Everything just gets really peaceful. So you feel like you're achieving the next level because you've moved into something more subtle and you've left behind something that was more, I don't know, the word is coarse or gross in the sense of like it's more physical in that sense. It's more tangible. That's a good word, tangible. So once you reach shamatha, the danger is that you're just going to keep going into more and more subtle states. And that is not the laktong we're looking for. Francisco, this is not the insight you're looking for. These are not the droids you're looking for, right? That's why Obi-Wan Kenobi's like, these are not the droids you're looking for. Using the Force, you see, so what he's saying is there's a lot of meditations out there, and I've seen them that teach this. Shirak, excuse me. And they are just already carved out paths that keep the world the way the world is. So what should we do next? Let's see. Who's next here? Ooh, interpreter. Eka, are you interpreting? No. Would you like to read? No.
With pleasure.
Okay.
Rangre tundu nyerja sowonitarpa yinpe korweitsawa choje dakme kidonla chope jikten le lende pei hlaktonk kye go shing.
Nice pre-nasal here. That was very well done. This little doodad here, this little apostrophe. Right.
Thank you.
This out. Can you say it again? Because you do it better than I do.
Lende.
Nice. Lende, something like that. Good job. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Okay. So people like us, Rangre, this is Pabonka Rinpoche saying, people like you and me, like us guys, here's the big Lama being like, I'm just like you guys. And everyone's like, whatever, dude, right? It's when the Lama says, oh, I'm so normal. And the best Lamas are the ones that are the best at looking normal. And then they do things to surprise you. Anyhow, so Pamabonka Rinpoche is like, look, us guys, if our primary goal, right, is to reach liberation, Tarpa, all right, if we're trying to get there, right, we have to cut chuche. We have to cut the root of samsara, the root of the cycle of suffering, korwe sawa. We have to cut the root of that, right? So how are we going to cut the root of that? So therefore we should pursue, we must, good. This word means to arise or something, but we need to pursue. I like the word pursue here. We need to pursue an insight practice, laktong, which lende goes beyond this world. Okay. It's a practice which is designed to transform the normal world that you perceive. Through what? What kind of activities? Through an investigation of the meaning of the lack of self-nature to things and people, to both people and things. All right. So what he's saying is that if you engage in any meditation that is not doing this, you're just wasting your time. Which is why we're starting with the meditation and emptiness chapters first. Because if it takes us 10 years to translate the entire book, or 15 years, or something like that, do we want to waste our time with 15 years of useless meditation? And I had a debate with someone about this once. We were debating a lower school's presentation of how to reach shamatha. And primarily this lower school's method to reach shamatha is using the breath. And it's a tremendous, like the instructions on this practice are amazing. Like they're really, really good. And I've studied it, and I can say they work. And so I'm debating someone on this. I'm like, yeah, but it's helping me. I'm getting shamatha, right? So I'm having this debate. I was debating a 3-year retreater. They did more retreat in a year. They did more meditation in a year than I had done in my entire life. Like good luck. Good luck arguing with someone who has direct experience. But we weren't arguing, we were debating, and he was trying to show me something. And so, I said, but look, if you can achieve shamatha this way, then why not? Like, and then once you get the shamatha, then why can't I just then flip over and put emptiness into that meditation? Since my meditation is so good, I can just do emptiness. And then, like, if this is a quick path to get to shamatha, why shouldn't I take it? We just discussed this and debated it for quite a while. And his point was, if you don't understand emptiness, the shamatha that so-called shamatha that you intend to achieve will be unachievable because you won't know how to plant the seeds to be able to achieve it. So therefore, you should be doing emptiness meditations even if you don't have shamatha. And I was like, what? What did you say? Basically he said, to understand, to create, in order to create the causes and conditions for shamatha to take hold, you have to understand how to plant the seeds to do it. And if by some great fortune you're able to achieve shamatha using these lower path, it's because of your old seeds and not because of anything new that you've been doing. In parentheses, the people practicing the lower paths are amazing practitioners and are kind, and they serve people. And don't think of this as like, oh, they're such lower Hinayana practitioners. Don't do that. That's not what's going on. Okay. But there's stories in all of the sutras about people who achieve higher great states, but they haven't prepared themselves for what has to come next. And so they literally have to like start again. So why have to start again when you should just start at the place that's going to help you the most long term? Okay. That's what they're saying here is, if you understand emptiness, you want to be using a high virtuous object, one that's karmically charged while you're meditating. You don't want to be wasting your time on something that's not planting good seeds already. And just focusing on your breath, which we do in the beginning of meditations, is to calm us down and get us ready is fine and helpful and useful, and you should do it. And it doesn't have a virtuously charged object in it. From a certain point of view. Okay. Maybe there's a time in your practice when the breath will be the part of your practice, but it's not the object of the practice. You use the breath in a certain way, but the breath is not the object. Okay. So the main point here is, let's put something in our meditation that's going to propel us forward the fastest. Even if it seems like shamatha is coming on faster through the lower track meditation practices, because that's just good seeds anyway. And there's no reason why you can't do it quickly meditating on emptiness. I lost that debate. Thank you. It's 9:00. Thanks for being here with us. This is a lot of fun for me. There's not as much resources for the translation of this chapter as the other chapter. They're like hold on to. So it's a lot more, how do I say, provisional translations. And I'm using Geshe-la's draft of the Illumination of True Thought as the basis to understand what the heck is being said, like using the Lama's translations of emptiness to help us translate this as well. So it's a lot more work, but it's also a lot more fun because it gets to be more provisionally understood as we're going through it. And that's how it works anyway. You understand a little bit, then you understand a little bit more, then you understand a little bit more. So just meditate. Yay. Thank you all for joining. I will see you on Monday, same time, Arizona time, 6 a.m. for ACI 13, and then this class afterwards. Thank you all very much for joining. And let's say goodbye to each other and have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you for teaching.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the teaching. Thank you.
谢谢老师，谢谢翻译老师。
Thank you.
谢谢老师，谢谢 Katie。
Bye.